Okay, welcome to the Rebuilding Futures podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Kenneth Young. Normally, I would say my other guests are not here with me today, and that is okay. But that is not the story. I'm not going to go into a long introduction because I met this brother and I feel like he can introduce himself a lot better than I can. So let's start with Aron. How's it going?
Going well. Just thankful to be here. Grateful for the opportunity to be able to share with you and also your people.
Okay, let's not waste any time. Let's jump into who are you? What makes you want to join a podcast like the Rebuilding Futures podcast? And give me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I appreciate that. So, I'm a person that comes from very humble means, and some of those things allowed me to see circumstances that I had no appreciation for. Just to put it into context, my parents were business owners in Houston. They owned a little restaurant in Sunnyside and on the south side of Houston, and that left them out of the home from 7 a.m. till about 9 p.m. at night. And then when they came home, they were so miserable that I said, man, if doing the good things in life or what they consider right is going to yield me this on the other side of the equal sign, I knew at an early age that was something that I did not want. So I ran to the streets. Running to the streets ended up costing me more than I really wanted to pay. Spent some time in incarceration. And my desire now, through experiencing change in incarceration and also my resocialization, is to give back to the people who don't know that they need something given to them in the first place. Right. So the reason that I'm here is because I understand that there's a need of value assessment on people who are just running around the streets recklessly like I was at an early age, and they don't even know that they need to be tapped on the shoulder. So hopefully I can be a voice in the wilderness and I can tap somebody on the shoulder and say, stop in your tracks, turn around, and let's go a different direction.
I love that. Let's get into, you say, incarceration. So how long were you incarcerated?
I was incarcerated for 11 years on a 15-year sentence.
11 years on a 15-year sentence. Wow, so you almost did the whole thing.
Almost did the whole thing.
So some of our other co-hosts have been on, and they talk about the turning point in jail. So there's a turning point that they had in jail. They realized, one, that they were going to get out, and two, that they didn't want to go back in. Did you have one of those turning points as well?
I had a few. I'll tell you what. There was some great change that came a little bit further in my incarceration. But, man, early on, when I was around a group of guys and we were just talking about some things and a discussion came up where a gentleman was talking about where North Dakota is. And there was a person that was arguing the fact that North Dakota was in South America. I knew I was in the wrong place. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I knew that I wasn't in the place that I should be in.
Yeah.
And that's a small factor, but when I was in prison, I had left the county jail. I was in prison. I'd been there for a while. I say about year number 6. Probably took me about 6 good years to work out the wild, get focused on me, my positive self-development, and understanding that there was more out there, and realizing that I didn't have to be in prison in order for me to turn my life around. But there I was, and a guy asked me a question when I wanted something that I didn't get, and I felt like I should have, and I was going to quit. He asked me, he said, have you done all you can right where you are?
Mm-hmm.
And that question echoes throughout my life to this day. And when he asked me that, it made me take a step back, because if I was going to answer that question honestly, I hadn't done all that I could right where I was. And so it set me on a pathway of thinking critically about who I am, what I'm capable of, respecting my limitations, and within those limitations, still finding a pathway of progress.
Okay. And last time Chris was here, he was talking about, Chris and Scoop, they were talking about just the ability to survive. So how they survived in incarceration. And they were talking about, let's say, having to, I don't want to say get more evil, or having to survive without being more evil than some of their cellmates, or being more evil than their environment, so that when they got out, they knew that they could be productive, or they knew that they wouldn't go back because they didn't change themselves completely. How did you stay away from that point of becoming so evil to survive on the inside that you wouldn't be able to survive on the outside?
It's a good question. You know, and I can wholly understand that perspective, and I respect it because I've seen it work in action. But I want to offer you a different way to look at it. Some people can choose to out evil or outmaneuver people through evil means in a circumstance like that, or you can psychologically rise above. You can out nice someone as well. And when I say out nice, especially in such a aggressive environment, I'm not talking about being the type of person that's going to lay down and allow yourself to be bulldozed or run over by anyone or intimidated by anyone. But there's ways that you can psychologically maneuver people that are in a fragile emotional state. You can do it's easy to do. If somebody is of sound mind and they're thinking in a rock solid way, then it's tough to maneuver a person like that. But when you have evil present and you have people that are dealing with deep-rooted, deep-seated emotional circumstances in their life, it's a lot easier to maneuver those people when you take a second to take a step back, right? And so what I would do is I would study my environment, I would study the people, and then I would study the word. And I had instruction, instruction, and instruction. So when you took that instruction, stacked on top of itself, and then stacked again, it was real easy to see who these people were, right? These people they're playing a role. They have on a costume, they have on a face, and every day they're on a stage. And as long as you are a person that's not a part of the production, but you can see the stage from the bleachers, then you have a different viewpoint of what's going on around you. And it's easier to navigate, manipulate, and maneuver through a circumstance like that. I don't want to say that I just out nice people, but I learned real early in this thing that if I wanted to get my way, there were certain ways to do it. Let the lions roar, let these apes and these gorillas shake the cages, and then just sit back and look at everything. And when it was time for me to insert myself in a quiet, cool, calm, collected way and then speak peace to these people who are promoting violence, man, these people are willing to listen because they're really hanging on to the opportunity for hope and change.
Okay, so let me see if you agree with this statement. So I want to make sure I present it correctly and the difference between what you said and what they said. Because I've really been on this kick about perspective. So are you saying that you were able to do it because you did more? They did 2 years each. You did 10.
I did 11.
You did 11.
Yes, sir.
So in doing 11, would you say that you were able to do it because the way you saw the environment? So I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a picture of it's an optical illusion. And if you look at it one way, it's a very old woman. And then you look at it another way, it's a very young woman.
Yeah, for sure.
Depending on how you look at it.
Yes, sir.
But either way you see it is a reality for somebody.
Yes, sir.
If I see it as an old person, that's my reality. If you see it as a young woman, that's your reality. You were able to survive because you saw the reality different. You didn't see it to where you had to be more evil. You used, let's call it some critical thinking skills to think your way through a longer sentence. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And what you're saying is spot on as well, because people that come and go in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, these people can be as violent as they want to be in prison. They can be as evil as they want to be. But I've got a 15-year sentence that I knew for sure I was going to do at least 7.5 years on. So when you walk into a situation like that and the first thing on your mind is, okay, this is an extremely aggressive environment, and it seems like what I need to do to assimilate is become aggressive and to become violent as well. And you do that, man, you're gonna have a really rough road.
Yeah.
7 years and 10 years, that's a rough road to have that much violence in your life for that long of a period of time. And if you commit to that, to go back to your first question, I don't know how you can come back from that. I don't know how you can come back from 10 years of extreme violence and social anxiety. I don't know how you can do it. Extreme violence wasn't my lot, but social anxiety was definitely something that I was a very unwilling participant in, because I couldn't shake the fact that the level of anxiety that I was experiencing in that prison system was higher than any human should have to ever experience in life.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's get to the question of how did you do those 11 years and then come out? And so I know a little bit of your background now, okay, but tell the people what your background now is, what you're doing now. Then I want to get to, so it's a two-folded question.
Okay.
Can you tell us about your background now, what you're doing now, and how you got from those 11 years to where you are right now, and if those 11 years prepared you to be where you are right now.
Sure. Yeah, all good questions. So right now, I am currently a business manager for a family-owned business, and I've been the sales manager for the business. I've been the general sales manager for the business, multi-million-dollar corporation or multi-million-dollar company that this family owns, and I'm thankful to be there. I was invited there 4 years ago now, went there, and it's been lights out for 4 years. Before then, I was in finance in the car industry, and I had done that for just about 2 years, and that was a very successful venture. Before then, which was right after my incarceration and release, I came home and I sold cars, and I did that because I felt like that was a way into some sort of career path, and I just believe that God led me down that main vein, and it turned into everything that I have today, which people can look at my life and say, hey, this guy is a re-socialization success story, right? And on some levels I am, and on other levels I failed greatly. And there have been things that I had to overcome, different obstacles. But going to the question about what those 11 years did and how that affected me and whether or not that was a time of preparation, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I talked to a gentleman just yesterday, and we were having a conversation about similar things. And I told him, I said, incarceration was like pregnancy, and what's happened since I've been home was like birth. Mm-hmm. Right. So the gateway was the birth, and then you get to see the child grow, and then people celebrate the smile. They celebrate the crawl. They celebrate the walk. They celebrate the talk, all those things. And so for me, I'm like a man that's reborn into society. But if there was no proper preparation while I was incarcerated, then obviously my life would look very different at this point. And so I did things like study cognitive intervention. It was very important for me to do so. I established a faith foundation while I was gone. Extremely important for me to do so, because when I went to prison, I understood the concept of there being a higher being and some guiding force in your life, but I didn't know the difference between Jesus, God, the apostles, the prophets. I didn't know anything about Muhammad. I didn't know anything about all these other different faith systems. So I studied world religion, because I said, if I'm going to identify myself by any faith system, then I need to know not only why this, but why not these, right? And so I walked into that, and I studied and studied and studied. While I was incarcerated, I didn't waste time.
Okay.
I wasted no time in incarceration. I was physically fit. I was spiritually fit. I was mentally fit. And that came from a place. When I went to the county jail, I saw a gentleman come back from prison. Right? He had been released, and he came back. He was on parole, and he came back into the county jail. And I was 24 when I was arrested. Didn't get home till I was 35. So I was 24 when I was arrested, and this man came to the county jail, and he was 35 years old, and he seemed emotionally and just socially like he was a 14-year-old. He had been in prison for years and years and years, just got out and came right back to the county jail. When I saw that, man, I said, God, please, whatever you do, every day that I grow physically, please allow me and help me to steer me to grow emotionally, mentally, and I just need that help from you, right? And spiritually. Okay. And so I focused on those things while I was gone, right? It was a daily discipline to continue growing in those areas as I grew older physically.
Okay, so one of my concepts that I like to follow is what if the detour is the actual way? So what that means is, when I was talking to Chris and Scooter, they both said, okay, the mistake I made. Mm-hmm. And I'm now under the belief, like, what if the mistakes aren't the mistakes? Mm-hmm. What if that's the way? So what if the way to where we are right now, where we're sitting in this podcast, had to be that way? And only certain people are strong enough to take that way and then get to this point. So like, some people aren't strong enough to make the mistake. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Had I gone to jail, like my cousin going to jail, I can't 100% say I would have survived in jail. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what if my way was to be me and to get to this point to where we're on this podcast, and then your way was to get to this point to where we're on the podcast? So maybe there were no mistakes. It was everything that we all had to go through to build up the knowledge and the strength that we have right now to do and help people like we're trying to do. Yeah, is that something you agree with? You think that? You think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you pair that up, if you don't mind me jumping in, it's a very sensible line of thought, because if you pair that up against something that people in wider social arenas can consider the market itself, right? Mm-hmm. So the market may be going down, and that's a terror for some people. It is ruining people financially. People are getting fired. Careers are ending. All of those things are happening. People are losing homes, cars. They're losing retirements. They're losing life savings. And then a correction comes into the market. Mm-hmm. Right? And when that correction comes, well, now the market begins to shift and change a little bit. And those same people that lost all these things and thought that life was over and that there was no chance for them to recoup and recover, man, these people are now living better lives than they've ever lived before because of a correction after a really tough circumstance. Mm-hmm. And so when you pair up different social arenas and you say, okay, let me look at this not in just one scope. So this is what I tell people. I like to kaleidoscope some casual thoughts, right? Okay. You have to kaleidoscope these thoughts, because if you just get locked into something in like a cross site, then that's all you can see. But when you kaleidoscope those casual thoughts, then you can see them in many different ways, many different colors. The spectrums are different, the sizes, the shapes, all those things are different because you kaleidoscope those casual thoughts and you don't get locked into just one thing like you would hunting a deer with a scope. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that. I really like that concept. I really like that analogy. If you were talking to the younger you, what's the first advice you would give you? So you talking to 19-year-old Aron, what's the first piece of advice you would give him?
The first piece of advice that I would give to my 19-year-old self is, you don't have to wear the costumes that you put on every day. That's number one. It's okay for you to be who you really are, not who you expect yourself to be because of the environment that you're in. And everything that you think you can do, you can, and you don't have to lose before you get there. But see, the disconnect that I had, and the disconnect that you're going to face, young man, is that you know where you are, you know where you want to be, but you have no roadmap to get there. That's going to be the intensive work. Because if you continue to not only acknowledge where you are, but hope for where you want to be, but don't put the work in order to find the breadcrumb trail that's going to help you get to that place, you will fail. There's no doubt about it. You will fail. So recognize the fact that failure is a possibility. Even though you feel like you can take over the world, failure is possible. So you have to write the roadmap out. You have to be intelligent enough and patient enough to search out the things that you need in order to get from this X on the map to that X on the map. And there are people that are willing to help you get there. Right now, you're in an age of grace. This is an age of grace for you, because people will look at you. They'll recognize your intelligence. They'll recognize your passion. They'll recognize that you want to go places, and they'll lend to you, because when they look back at you and they see you full of life, they're willing to help. But I tell you what's coming up really close. It's the age of expectation. When you walk in a room and it doesn't matter what you say, they'll usher you right outside the room because they expect you to know more. They expect you to perform better. They expect you to have a skill set that says that you can get this done with no headaches for them. So while you're in your age of grace, getting closer to your age of expectation, take some time to figure out the roadmap that's going to lead you to the places of success that you really want to be in. There's no shortcut. All you have to do is work for it.
Man, I felt like you just talked to the 19-year-old me.
That's it, man.
I mean, no joke. I felt like you just talked to the 19-year-old me. I feel like there are a lot of 19-year-olds that need to hear that. I mean, like that type of advice.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of, wait a minute, let me clarify. There are a lot of people, forget 19, you can be 50 and in trauma.
Yeah.
And need to hear that type of advice. Okay, so we got the 19-year-old you. Let's go to a room full of kids.
Yeah.
room full of kids. On the show, we will have a group of kids who have parents who have been incarcerated for 10 years and more. So before we get them on the show, let's say you're talking to those kids right now who have who have parents who are incarcerated. What advice would you give them to, one, for them, and two, how to be prepared for when their parent gets home? You've come home, right?
Yeah.
So what can they do? It's not their job to make their mother or father feel better.
Yeah, correct.
How can they help the situation to where they keep a mother and a father in the house? You understand what I'm saying?
I think so. Let me touch the first one. Man, I tell you, one of the things that I would share with a young child is something that, I've spoken about, with my children. And man, I'm so thankful that I've had a great relationship with my daughter and my son as well. But my son, that relationship was forged after a long period of separation. Number one, the fact that your parent has gone away is going to be something that is always going to be with you, no matter how strong or how weak the relationship was between the two of you. You just knowing that your parent has been sent to a place of confinement is something that is going to give you an opportunity to line up with a shame-based identity. And you don't have to. Sometimes you'll find yourself in a circumstance where you feel a tug or a pinch on the inside of you because you know that you've experienced loss. And you'll feel it most when you see other family units show up intact: mother, father, children. Even if it's a stepfather, you'll find yourself negotiating and saying, well, at least that family has this, right? And when you look at the world with an even though, well, at least mentality, it's not going to serve you well. Sometimes you just have to dig deep enough inside of yourself, even if you feel like you don't know how to, and say, listen, God created me for who I am, and I am enough. I have to be enough. And the fact that my parent made choices that took them away from me says nothing about who I am. That was their choice. What set me free when it came to dealing with my own parents, even though they hadn't gone through any incarceration, is when I looked at them. My parents' name are Dawn, that's my mother, and my father's name is Ray. And when I looked at them as Dawn and Ray, rather than the role that they play in my life as mom and dad, that gave me some freedom. You see, because I don't know what your mother or your father's name is, but let's just say, I don't know, Derek, John, Michael, Chris, Jermaine. That person has some things that they need to work on. You have to just know that they have some issues that are going to take them away from you because they're that person first. Before you call them dad, they are who they were. And so you have to release people and allow them to be who they are, even though it's going to cost you something. That's a tough thing to do, but if you can find some way to do it, then that'll give you freedom. Because when you forgive people, which is what you should be doing, when you forgive these people, it's not about you doing something for them. It's about you releasing something from your life, that negative energy that you don't need to have with you. Now, you asked me.
I'm gonna jump in real quick because you said something that, man, I really resonate with. That's not just for kids whose parents are going away and incarcerated. Mm-hmm. That's also for kids whose parents just left.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to accept your dad or your mom as who they are first. You want them to be the mother, the father.
Right.
But my dad's name was Lehman. So Lehman was Lehman first.
Yes, sir.
I don't know what Lehman went through, but he obviously had to have gone through something that made him Lehman. And so me looking at him, one, is just my dad, is going to, of course, give me a certain feeling of abandonment. Yeah. But if I think of him as, my dad was just a dude, and I don't know what that dude went through. It may be a reason why that dude couldn't be, a father, same as like being incarcerated. His choice, was his choice. But I mean, I think that helps so many more kids, not just kids whose parents are incarcerated, is what I'm trying to say. Kids whose parents are just not what they think they should be based on. I see my friends' parents in the house, and they got the 2 Cadillacs and the 2 parents that work at the same job. Okay. So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Going on to the second one?
Yeah. So it refresh me real quick. The second point was,
how can they help? Is there a way that they can help? Like, we're not saying it's their job, but their parent is returning home, right? how can they help, I don't know how you say, like, feel better, make their parent, make it better to where they don't lose the parent again? Is there a way, or is there something that they can do that will ease the situation?
Okay, so there's a lot to that question, and I'm gonna try to answer it in a very responsible way. I don't believe that it's the responsibility of the child to ease the burden of the parent when they come home in any particular way, and I'll have to respectfully reject any type of projection that only if the child would have done X, Y, and Z, then the parent would not have fallen into recidivism. So the way that I look at it is this. When I came home, I literally got down on my knees and begged my daughter for a relationship as though I was proposing to her. And she walked away from me.
Okay.
So, I had to accept that. There's nothing that a child should be felt, should make a child feel responsible for catering to the feelings of a person that abandoned them, because of their actions. Now, if they would like to fortify a strong relationship with them, then I believe that they should leave little indicators of trust with that parent. Right? Because trust is to be earned, it's not to be given, especially after such a chasm of, presence. So coming home, we have these big expectations. Hey, first of all, I'm your father, right? And so I know I messed up, but I'm your dad, and I heard your mom said you did this, and I'm going to get this straight, and I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to fix it. We go right into parenting role, when the truth is we need to go back into refriending role. And I believe in being both a parent and a friend, not a friend more than a parent or a parent more than a friend. But we need to get back into an establishment of trust, right? A reciprocated relationship where I'm going to give and give and give. And if I get a little, I'll be thankful for it, because our children don't owe us anything at that point. And we have to remember and keep it in perspective that we're the parent, we're the adult, and they're the child. So if we give and give again, and then we get a little bit, we can't get our feelings hurt, because when we come home, a lot of times we're fragile and emotional because of the circumstance that we just came from. So we have to be mindful. The child should be responsible for one thing, and that's being a child and being respectful. That's it. Just being respectful as a child, right? And that's it, because they have opinions.
Okay. Man, good stuff. Okay. We touched on, Chris told a story about being in jail and seeing someone die, okay? Because of a television channel. Wanted to watch a basketball game, someone else wanted to watch a different game. Person got hit, actually didn't try to kill him, but hit his head on the table, bled out right there in the middle of the floor. That did something to him. It really did something to him to where he knew, okay, I got to get out of here. This is not where I want to be. Do you have any instances like that where you saw something that I know you talked about the decisions you made that let you know you didn't want to be back. You knew you didn't belong there. Was there any situation like that where you just saw something that you just, okay, now I know this is, I'm getting out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the shameful thing is that it was very similar. So I've seen people die in prison for sure, right in front of me. But the situation that comes to mind is seeing a person that was beat into a seizure behind the television. It's one of the worst circumstances that you can think of, and they're controlled by gangs, controlled by whoever the most violent person in the dorm or the pod or whatever you want to call it, that typically is going to be controlled by either a gang or by a race or by the most violent person that's in there with you. And channel change, and this guy, they were actually in the same gang. And because this person called this other person out of his name, which is a violation of gang rules, they had to fight, right? Neither one of them really even wanted to, but the level of expectation associated with that says that either you do it or everyone gets a hold of you at a later time. And so they fought, and, this guy just beat the other one into a seizure. And I said, man, this is the most senseless thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. Neither one of these men really wanted to do what they did. But they knew, had they not done it, then they would be attacked by multiple people, each separately. And so to find yourself on the ground bleeding, nose broken, lips busted, and having a seizure, knowing that you didn't want to be a part of that, and the person who did it to you really didn't want to be a part of that either, and y'all were just trying to evade a bigger circumstance. You had a fear-based decision. Man, I said, man, I just cannot, to save my life, see the sense of why I'm in a place like this. You know, there was a gentleman who, I'm a over 20-year Toastmaster, which is a professional speaking club, right? Okay. And so there's a guy that did a presentation, and in that presentation, he asked the question, how did I get here and which way is home? Mm-hmm. And man, that's all I could think of when I saw that man beaten to a seizure. Right? You just points of self-reflection. Man, how did me personally, not everyone, some people need to be in prison. I needed to be in prison for at least 6 years. I needed to be there. But then the punishment phase of my incarceration played out. I don't know how I had gotten there, and I wanted to know which way was home. I'd seen enough at that point.
Okay, so one of the things we talked about was some of the kids that are growing up now that, like Chris was saying, are the toughest on their street, mm-hmm. toughest in their neighborhood, toughest in their zip code. But when they get to jail, not even close to the toughest. So with the story that you just described, what would you say to some of the kids that are out here right now thinking that they want to make their name on being, the toughest in their street, the toughest in their zip code? What would you say to some kids like that may be headed to the place where you just described? Somebody can die over a television station.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the risk of sounding like any other person of influence, or any other person that is trying to give some positive instruction to them, and they've heard this before and it's easy to blow off, at the risk of sounding just like these people, hey man, let me tell you something. If you talk the loudest, it's somebody who can hit harder. If you hit the hardest, there's somebody that can shoot faster. Right? There's always a circumstance that could cost you more than what you're looking for it to cost you. Right? There's always someone, even if you are the baddest, meanest, quickest draw, you got the most efficient pistols that you could ever think of. Hey, what do you do when you have the best targets shooting in the whole city, and you got the baddest guns that money can buy, and you're walking in one direction and somebody shoots you from the back? I mean, there's always an opportunity for you to miss it, man. And I tell you, the things that you're doing, if they're anything like the things that I was doing and the way that I was living my life, it doesn't get you what you're looking for on the other side of the equal sign, right? All of this is just an equation. The drug selling, the drug using, the pistol packing, the reckless lifestyle, all of those things equal up to something. You need to take a peek on the other side of the curtain to see what the other side of the equal sign has waiting for you, right? Typically, it's going to be prison for whatever period of time. It may be you being a paraplegic because a bullet struck you. I've got a good friend right now who walks, with a limp that you can't ignore, right? Because he was shot during a drug deal. Or you may just end up in a casket. There's always somebody out there waiting to do something to you, man. I think that I found more success. I know that I found more success in doing the right thing than I've ever found doing the wrong thing. And when it came to me doing the wrong thing, there's people who can attest to the fact that when I did it what the streets will call well. And I reaped all the benefits that I needed out of it at that time. It was enough for me and plenty more people. But it doesn't even hold a candle to the things that I've been able to do when I've been living right.
Man, that's it's funny. One of the things that Chris said was he had to get okay with the good version of him.
Oh yeah, no, me too. Me too.
He felt like every morning he woke up and walked with the devil, and he was okay with it, but he had to get okay with being good. So I think that's important that you said that. I'm gonna let you wrap it up. Say whatever you want to say. This is our beginning episode. I don't want to give them too much because we're gonna get back in this room. We're gonna talk some more. We're gonna get with like we say, different professionals.
Yes, sir.
We want to have all the services that anyone can need. We're not just talking about returning citizens. We're talking about anybody that is transitioning from one stage to the next stage, be it foster care, be it homelessness, be it people with mental disabilities, and anyone that just needs help. If you just need somebody to talk to or somebody to listen to you talk. So in closing, what would you like to say?
Man, I'll keep it real brief. I know that from being someone who was outside of a faith system for so long, and someone who still is doing the best I can to navigate that as soon as you say a couple of things, one of many things, you can say higher power, you can say God, you can say Jesus. As soon as somebody says something like that, it's so easy to offend and turn off anybody that's listening to you. And I get it, because I was one of those people that was turned off as soon as somebody says it. And that's cool. I'm not going to preach to you right now. You don't have to worry about that. But if you want to know who I am or how I made a change on the inside, and if you care to listen to any of that, then my story is going to stay the same every time. Sow myself into the Spirit through submission. I didn't get that from a book. I didn't get that from the Bible itself. I didn't get that from the Quran. I didn't get that from reading any other holy book. Man, there is a spirit of influence that can govern my life that I have to just yield myself to. I believe in principles that are higher than me, right? And so when I sow myself into the Spirit through submission, then my life doesn't belong to me. I've committed myself to something else, a higher cause, a higher call. And what that does for me is it helps me to stay accountable, because if you are anything like me, then you probably don't want to be accountable to any man on the face of this earth. Probably just don't want to do it, because when you look at them, you see somebody like, hey, they're either equal to me or they're less than me, but nobody's greater than me on the face of this earth. Cool. No worries. You can work on that, because there are people that are greater than you on the face of this earth. I recognize it for myself, and you should recognize it too. But when you sow yourself into the Spirit through submission, man, that inventory is impeccable. Self-reflection works. God bless, good people.
All right, I'm not going to mess it up by saying something else after that. So on that note, thank you for joining Rebuilding the Futures podcast, and we will talk to you again.